Namaste.
Namaste Kumar. Namaste Devika.
Namaste.
Namaste Ramanananda. Namaste Dr. Jaya.
This is an interview on the newly published book Self-Realization Through Self-Knowing, brought out by Yogi Impressions Mumbai and written by Dr. Shankara Bhagavatpada, who is on my left. On my right is Devika Durai. I am Subramanian Kumar. On the left of Dr. Shankara is Balaji Ramanananda, and all the way to the extreme left is Dr. Jaya Indus. Dr. Shankara Bhagavatpada, Namaste.
Namaste to all of you.
Namaste. Namaste. Let me start with the first basic question. Who should read this new book?
The book is actually intended for 3 or 4 categories of people. Firstly, mumukshus, that means seekers of moksha. They are not just ordinary seekers in the spiritual life. Ordinary seekers are in the spheres of artha and kama, whereas the mumukshus are in the spheres of dharma and moksha. So they are meant for mumukshus. Then they're meant for all people who have kind of graduated in life and crossed the milestone of 60 years or 65 years of age, and that brings in a certain maturity. And the book is also intended for those people who have tremendous sufferings in life and who are looking for a way to completely dissolve this suffering. So it's intended for all of these people.
There are many books that have been written on self-realization by various masters. How is this book different from them? I also understand this book is the product of an international retreat on self-knowing and self-realization, which was conducted in February 2016. I might also add here that when it comes to self-knowing, we have only books published by J. Krishnamurti, whereas on self-realization, there are plenty of books written by various masters. Are you attempting to do any kind of bridging between the two here in this book?
Yes, that's what I'm actually trying to do. We have 2 continents, an ancient and hallowed continent of self-realization, endless tradition, immensely rich, and then the nascent and virgin continent of self-knowing, which covers the lifetime work of the master J. Krishnamurti, that's during his tenure of 60 years. And I noticed that spiritual seekers and spiritual masters in the continent of self-realization do not turn in the direction of the continent of self-knowing. And the people who have been listening to Krishnamurti, they are not looking in the direction of the continent of self-realization. So there is a disconnection between the 2 continents. So this is what I observed. And my life so evolved that I became a kind of amphibian, living intermittently in both worlds, both continents. So I thought that we must create a connection or a bridge between the world of self-knowing and the world of self-realization, and that is what the book and the retreat is all about.
Thank you. Is self-knowing different from self-realization? Because generally these terms sometimes are used synonymously. There is a lot of confusion. So it would be great if you can elaborate on this.
Right. Now you will notice that throughout the work, I am using the word self in 2 distinct ways. Firstly, there is the self of ancient spiritual India by that term, and that is described in the work by using capital S, capital self. Now that represents the Atma or the universal self, which is just the core of every human being. But because we don't touch that core in the course of our day-to-day living, that core is practically terra incognito for us. What is, however, very familiar to us and what is almost synonymous with ourselves is the little self, which is represented in the whole work by italicized form of self with lowercase. Now this represents the self which is moving and changing, the self which is getting hurt, the self which is self-centered, the self which is very divisive in its thinking. And one obviously has to answer the question, since man seems to have both the selves, an unknown kind of far-off self, the Atman, and then the known self which is inseparable from us, how these two selves are actually connected. And that problem has to be solved before we can talk about self-realization. Everybody is talking about self-realization, but I feel that we are on slippery ground because we do not define who we are, and we are the little self. So the book kind of shows you how to go from one to the other.
Thank you very much.